The sun was setting over the dusty plains of Wyoming, casting long shadows across the rugged landscape. The air carried a faint chill as night began to creep in, and the distant howl of a lone coyote echoed through the valley. At the edge of this desolate expanse stood a modest ranch, its wooden fence weathered by time and elements. It belonged to Thomas Grady, a man whose life revolved around hard work, resilience, and an unyielding love for his family. But lately, something had been troubling him deeply. Every morning, as the first rays of sunlight pierced through the horizon, Thomas would walk toward the chicken coop with heavy steps. Each day, he found fewer chickens than the one before. At first, it seemed like just a few here and there, a couple missing from the flock. But now, the numbers were alarming. He couldn't understand what was happening. Coyotes? Maybe, but they usually left signs, feathers scattered about or bloodstains on the ground. Yet none of that could be seen. Thomas scratched his stubbled chin, staring at the empty spaces where hens once clucked noisily. His wife, Eleanor, approached him, her hands resting gently on his shoulder. She wore a worried expression, her eyes reflecting the same concern etched into his face. "Tom," she said softly, "we need to figure out what's going on. Those chickens are our livelihood." "I know, Ellie," he replied grimly. "I've thought about everything, coyotes, foxes, maybe even someone sneaking onto the property. But nothing adds up." Little did they know, the truth lay buried beneath their very feet. Night fell swiftly, blanketing the ranch in darkness. A million stars twinkled above, but the moon remained hidden behind thick clouds. Inside the cabin, Thomas sat by the fireplace, sharpening his hunting knife, while Eleanor mended a torn shirt. Their daughter, Clara, curled up in a corner with a book, though her attention kept drifting toward the window, where the wind whispered eerily through the trees. "Papa?" Clara finally asked, breaking the silence. Her voice trembled slightly, betraying her fear. Do you think it's safe outside?" Thomas paused mid-stroke, looking at her with gentle eyes. "Of course, sweetheart. Whoever or whatever is taking the chickens won't dare come near us. We'll get to the bottom of this tomorrow." Clara nodded, trying to mask her unease, but deep down, she felt the weight of the mystery pressing against them all. As the clock struck midnight, the world outside grew eerily still. Not even the crickets dared chirp. In the distance, however, a low rumble reverberated through the earth, almost imperceptible to anyone not paying close attention. It was as if the ground itself was alive, stirring under the cover of darkness. Morning came, bringing with it another grim discovery. This time, not only were more chickens gone, but part of the chicken coop's foundation appeared disturbed. Dirt was kicked up, and some planks looked loose. Thomas knelt down, inspecting the damage closely. His brow furrowed as he noticed claw marks, not those of a wild animal, but something larger, perhaps human-like. "This doesn't make sense," he muttered to himself, running a hand through his dark hair streaked with gray. Who would dig under the coop? And why? Eleanor joined him, holding a lantern high to illuminate the area better. "Tom, look closer. There's something strange about these markings." He leaned in further, examining every detail. Then his fingers brushed against something cold and metallic embedded in the dirt. Pulling it free, he held up a rusted key, its edges worn smooth by age. Confusion clouded his features. What could this mean? "We need to dig deeper," he declared firmly, determination sparking in his eyes. "Whatever is happening here, we're going to uncover it." The digging began late that afternoon, after the heat of the sun had subsided somewhat. Thomas enlisted the help of two neighbors, Sam and Henry, who arrived armed with shovels and curious expressions. Together, they worked tirelessly, tossing dirt aside until the entire base of the coop was exposed. At first, there was nothing unusual, just compacted soil and rocks. But then, Sam struck something solid with his shovel. Everyone froze, exchanging nervous glances. Slowly, Thomas cleared away the debris, revealing a hidden trapdoor made of sturdy oak. Its surface bore intricate carvings, symbols that none of them recognized. "What in tarnation is this?" Henry exclaimed, wiping sweat from his brow. "I don't know," Thomas admitted, "but I intend to find out." With great effort, he pried open the trapdoor, the hinges creaking loudly as it swung wide. Below lay a narrow staircase descending into darkness. A chill ran down everyone's spine. No one spoke. The tension hung thick in the air. Finally, Thomas lit a lantern and descended cautiously, each step echoing ominously. Behind him, Sam and Henry followed, weapons drawn, ready for whatever might await below. The passage led to a cavernous chamber, dimly lit by torches mounted along the walls. Dust covered nearly everything, suggesting it hadn't been touched in decades. At the center of the room stood an old chest, locked tight with chains. Around it, strange artifacts littered the floor, crystals, bones, and pieces of parchment yellowed with age. Thomas approached the chest, the key he'd found earlier fitting perfectly into its lock. As he turned it, the chains clinked and fell away, granting access to its contents. Inside lay bundles of money, gold coins, and jewels glittering in the flickering light. But among the treasures was something far more unsettling, a journal bound in black leather. Sam picked it up carefully, flipping through its brittle pages. His eyes widened as he read aloud snippets of entries detailing bizarre rituals and warnings of curses. Apparently, the previous owner of the ranch had dabbled in forbidden practices, using the chickens as sacrifices to summon otherworldly beings. Unbelievable though it sounded, little did they know the ritual wasn't entirely complete. Something or someone was still lingering, waiting patiently for the final piece of the puzzle to fall into place. Back on the surface, the group discussed their findings, voices laced with both awe and dread. They decided to burn the journal and seal off the underground chamber permanently, hoping it would put an end to the disturbances. But as dusk settled once again, strange noises emanated from the woods surrounding the ranch. Low growls, footsteps crunching leaves, and faint whispers carried by the wind. Fear gripped their hearts, but resolve strengthened their spirits. Armed with rifles and lanterns, they ventured into the forest, determined to confront whatever threat loomed nearby. The journey took them farther than expected, until they reached a clearing bathed in eerie blue light emanating from a glowing crystal embedded in a rock formation. And there, standing amidst the glow, was a figure cloaked in shadows. Its form shifted unnaturally, neither fully human nor beast. For a moment no one moved, frozen in shock. Then, without warning, the creature lunged forward, its eyes blazing with malevolent intent. A fierce battle ensued, gunfire ringing out against the backdrop of howling winds. Despite being outnumbered, the creature proved relentless, forcing Thomas and his companions to fight with every ounce of strength they possessed. Just when hope seemed lost, Thomas remembered the journal's final entry, a spell to banish such entities back to their realm. Summoning courage, he recited the words aloud, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. The creature let out a deafening roar, thrashing violently as the spell took effect. Slowly, it dissolved into thin air, leaving behind only silence and the faint scent of sulfur. Exhausted yet triumphant, the group returned to the ranch, knowing their ordeal was over, at least for now. The chickens were safe, the treasure secured, and the curse lifted. As they gathered around the fire that evening, sharing stories of bravery and relief, Thomas glanced skyward, where a full moon cast a silvery glow over the land. Little did they know, however, that somewhere deep within the earth, another secret awaited discovery. And perhaps, someday, another adventure would call them forth once again. Until then, peace reigned over the ranch, a fragile yet cherished respite in the untamed Wild West. The days that followed were quiet, almost too quiet. The ranch returned to its usual rhythm, with the clucking of chickens and the soft rustle of wind through the tall grass. Thomas and Eleanor worked tirelessly to rebuild the coop, ensuring it was stronger than ever. Clara, meanwhile, spent her afternoons reading under the old oak tree, her laughter occasionally drifting toward the house. But beneath the surface calm, a subtle unease lingered. It wasn't something they could put their fingers on, but rather a feeling that crept into the corners of their minds whenever they thought about what had happened in the cavern. The journal's cryptic warning still echoed in Thomas's thoughts, and though he tried to push them aside, they refused to leave him alone. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Henry stopped by the ranch. He carried with him a bundle wrapped in cloth, his expression grave. "Tom," he began, clearing his throat nervously, "I think you should see this." Unwrapping the cloth, he revealed a small wooden figurine carved with intricate patterns similar to those found in the underground chamber. Its dark eyes seemed to stare straight into Thomas's soul, sending a shiver down his spine. Found it near my property line, Henry continued. Thought maybe it belonged to whoever left all that stuff beneath your coop. Thomas took the figurine, turning it over in his hands. A strange warmth emanated from it, almost pulsating like a heartbeat. He exchanged a glance with Eleanor, who looked equally troubled. We need to investigate further, he said firmly. There's more to this than meets the eye. The following morning, armed with picks and shovels, Thomas, Eleanor, and Clara set out beyond the boundaries of their land. Guided by intuition, or perhaps something darker, they ventured deeper into the wilderness than they ever had before. The terrain grew increasingly rugged, the air thick with the scent of pine and damp earth. Shadows danced along the forest floor, cast by sunlight filtering through the canopy above. After hours of searching, they stumbled upon a hidden grove surrounded by ancient trees whose trunks bore markings identical to those on the figurine. At the center stood an altar-like stone structure, moss-covered yet unmistakably man-made. Around it lay scattered remnants of rituals, charred bones, shards of pottery, and dried herbs twisted into knots. Clara gasped, stepping back instinctively. "Papa, we shouldn't be here," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Something feels wrong." Thomas placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Stay close, sweetheart. We're not leaving until we understand what we're dealing with." Eleanor approached the altar cautiously, her lantern casting flickering light across its surface. Etched into the stone was a map of sorts, depicting landmarks familiar to the area. But there was one symbol they hadn't seen before, a spiral surrounded by jagged lines, radiating outward like waves. "It's a warning," Eleanor murmured, running her fingers along the engraving. "Or maybe a guide." Before anyone could respond, the ground beneath them trembled slightly, as if responding to their presence. A low rumble filled the air, growing louder with each passing second. Leaves rustled violently overhead, and the once still atmosphere became charged with tension. "Get ready," Thomas shouted, grabbing his rifle. Behind him, Clara clutched her father's arm tightly, while Eleanor raised her lantern higher, scanning the surroundings for any sign of movement. From the shadows emerged figures, not human but humanoid. Their skin glistened like polished obsidian, their eyes glowing faintly with an otherworldly light. They moved silently, circling the group with predatory grace. Thomas fired a warning shot, the loud crack reverberating through the grove. The creatures paused momentarily, assessing the threat. Then, without warning, they attacked. The fight was brutal and chaotic. Bullets ricocheted off the creature's hardened skin, doing little damage. Instead, it was brute force and strategy that saved them. Thomas managed to knock one creature off balance, pinning it to the ground long enough for Eleanor to smash its head with the lantern. Clara, despite her fear, proved resourceful, using a nearby branch to fend off another attacker. As the battle raged on, Thomas noticed something peculiar. Each time a creature was defeated, the spiral symbol on the altar pulsed brighter, as if drawing energy from the fallen beings. Realization dawned on him. These creatures weren't acting independently. They were bound to the ritual, serving as guardians for whatever lay at its heart. "We have to destroy the altar," he yelled, reloading his weapon. "That's where their power comes from." Easier said than done. The remaining creatures redoubled their efforts, forcing the group to retreat toward the edge of the grove. Just when it seemed they might be overwhelmed, Clara spotted a large rock partially buried in the soil. With surprising strength, she yanked it free and hurled it toward the altar. The impact shattered the stone, releasing a blinding flash of light. The creatures let out ear-splitting screams, dissolving into wisps of smoke that vanished into the ether. When the glow faded, the grove was eerily silent, save for the sound of heavy breathing. Exhausted but alive, the family regrouped, their hearts pounding wildly. They stared at the ruins of the altar, now nothing more than rubble. "What do you think that was?" Clara asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know," Thomas admitted, shaking his head, "but I suspect it's connected to the journal, and whatever brought those creatures here in the first place." Eleanor knelt beside the remains, picking up a fragment of the altar. Embedded within it was a shard of crystal, pulsing faintly with residual energy. She held it up to the light, studying its properties. "This isn't natural," she said finally. "It's magic, ancient, dangerous magic. Thomas sighed, holstering his rifle. Then we'll deal with it. Whatever it takes, we'll protect our home and our lives. Back at the ranch, the nights grew colder, the stars burning brighter in the vast expanse of sky. The family gathered around the fireplace, recounting their harrowing experience. Though the immediate danger had passed, none of them doubted that this wouldn't be the last time they encountered the supernatural forces lurking in the Wild West. And so, life went on, marked by resilience and courage. For in a world where mysteries abounded and threats hid in plain sight, survival meant being prepared for anything. Until the next challenge arose, they would remain vigilant, their spirits unbroken, their bonds stronger than ever. Little did they know, however, that the true nature of the curse had only begun to reveal itself.